Welcome to the Women in Vinyl podcast with Jen DiEugenio, founder of Women in Vinyl, and contributor Robyn Raymond. This podcast facilitates conversations with those working in the vinyl record industry to educate, demystify, and diversify the vinyl community.
Thanks for tuning in for episode 16 of the Women in Vinyl podcast. On this episode, we talked to a design legend, Jeri Heiden, co-owner of Smog Design, who's been the artistic hand and mind behind some iconic record covers you're sure to have in your collection. From Dio to Madonna, she's done it all. The upcoming track is thanks again to Women in Vinyl fam, Normandie Records. Be sure to check out show notes and end credits for more on this upcoming track and ways to get involved, like the Women in Vinyl Patreon, womeninvinyl.com/Patreon, and more. Thanks for joining us, Jeri. So, for our listeners, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started both in design and in this industry? It's such a niche field.
Well, I got started in design, studying graphic design and packaging at Art Center in Pasadena. And I left after 1 year and moved to New York with my boyfriend and did some work there and never went back to school. So I worked at a design firm in New York, and I was like, this is kind of fun. I'm in New York. I'm 18 and 19 and traveling to Europe and working and not incurring more student loans or student debt or whatever, and I just never went back. So I worked for a couple of years in New York and then moved back to LA and I got a crappy job at a PR firm that was just not at all what I wanted to do, and every day I kept asking myself, why am I here? And I hate Century City and this is just bad. And so I started asking around friends, that I had gone to school with, some photographer friends, and who were working, starting to work in the music biz. And I just said, can you hook me up with anybody? Do you know anybody? Anybody need any work? Any freelancers or whatever? I just want to, try to make a change. And my friend George Holtz, who's a pretty famous photographer, at that time, he said, yeah, there's, Warner Brothers, they need some freelance help. They just got rid of they'd gone through like a really bad period, basically the post-disco era, where the record companies had, they'd laid off a lot of people. It was a tough time, early 80s. And he said they're looking for some freelance help. They could really use it if you could give my friend a call. And he was a roommate of the head of advertising, and her boyfriend was the creative director or head of creative at Warner Records. And he's like, just call this guy, Pete Johnson, and see if you can, basically, like, as a favor to me, my friend George, see if you can help them out. And I'm thinking, like, okay, like, right.
Right.
Warner,
no big deal.
Like, they really need me. Okay. I'm like 22. So I call Pete's office and I, ask for an interview or ask to come show my portfolio. And his secretary puts me through, which I find out later was really just, dumb luck. Completely dumb luck, because he He thought I was somebody else.
Amazing. I love that.
He thought I was a recording artist that was on the label at the time named Gerard McMahon. I've told this story a bunch of times because it's just funny.
Yeah.
It's the best.
And my name at the time was Jeri McManus, my maiden name. So she put me through, and I would start talking to Pete, and he's clearly like confused, does not know why, like, who is this person? This is not the guy assigned to our label that I thought I was picking up the phone to talk to.
Yeah.
So he got kind of flustered, and he just said, okay, like, come in, next Tuesday or whatever at 1:00. And so I had an appointment, and I guess, that's kind of the key, like that was the magic moment. And I went in, brought my portfolio, and it was just love at first sight. I think for both of us, like, I knew that this was a place that I wanted to work. I would do anything to work there. And just the vibe of like the lobby when you first go, walk in, and this is, 1982, and it was just like a magical place, like just the vibes, the music coming out of every hallway, photos, and, gold records and platinum records, and, boxes stacked everywhere, and just the hustle and bustle, lots and lots and lots of people, lots of young people working, and just, a great place. And I went up and I had my appointment, and he just loved my work and asked me if I could start, tomorrow, basically, if I would do freelance for them, if I would come in and do some freelance work. And so I, of course, lied to my other job. And so I have a family emergency. Which was really unusual for me. Like, I'm really just a real straight forward, straight arrow. And, but I was like, I am not missing this opportunity. So I took a week off from my other job, and I figured, well, I'll know one way or another, if this is going anywhere, if I should really quit or, just go back with my tail between my legs to my other job. And,
don't worry, my grandma's okay, everybody. It's fine. She made a full
it's the
recovery.
worst fever I've ever seen. It's like from the Queen's Gambit,
Yeah.
I've never seen a child so sick.
So sick.
Yeah. So yeah, I started freelancing, and they gave me just really basic stuff to do, but it was, I thought it was super exciting. I think the very first thing I was asked to do was to design a cassette single for the Talking Heads.
Yes. Oh man.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And basically they say, here's the album, here's the stuff that we have, like, come up with something. So one of my strengths, I think, that got me into the business at that time was I could sketch, I could draw, I could comp. Like, one of the things I learned from Art Center was marker comps. They train people in very commercially. That was sort of the I don't know, that was something that people like put down about Art Center students, was that they were very commercial, very ready to like go into business, because they trained, they did industrial design and product design and, photography and filmmaking and all that. So it wasn't like artsy fartsy so much. They did have a fine art department and illustration, of course, all of that, but it was a very kind of rigid curriculum. So I learned how to draw, learned how to draw type and how to draw people and how to draw whatever, so that was something that I was able to do that they hadn't seen anybody recently who could do that. So that was kind of a nice little benefit.
Yeah, I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and so
Oh, nice.
they're very focused on that as well.
Oh, they are. It's
The
very
business.
professional. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Did you find that there was a lot of women in your classes when you were going to school for that 1 or 2 years?
I'd say it was it was pretty well balanced. I mean, it was kind of segmented in the sense that compartmentalized, where certain departments tended to skew more masculine, like industrial design or automotive. Automotive design was like almost entirely men. And photography was probably, 80% male. But then when you got into graphic design or painting or illustration or other curriculums, it might be more, female. So it was a fairly mixed student body at that time. And before Art Center, I'd gone to Pepperdine University for a year, which I hated. So
So you started with the Talking Heads. Were cassettes the focus, or was vinyl really still the medium?
it was vinyl for sure. We would do everything on vinyl, or, all designs were conceived first for vinyl.
Right.
But there were, in 82, which is when I started, there were a lot of different formats that were, that were still viable, like cassettes. So this might have been, if I think back on it now, like this cassette single might have been an inexpensive entry point or for someone to buy, a track by the Talking Heads who maybe hadn't bought the album yet. So I'm sure it was very low hanging fruit in terms of like what the art director, asked me to do. It's like, this is like really low risk, like nobody's going to see this. So let's have the freelancer do it.
Did you take inspiration from the 12-inch like record already and transform it into the J card?
For sure.
Or are you just like, sure, I got this, no problem?
Yeah, I'm just going to make up my own stuff because no, I'm sure I looked at, what was there and crafted something out of what was available to me. I don't remember exactly. I just remember like a Talking Heads cassette single landing on my desk and thinking that was pretty wild.
Yeah, totally.
So when you moved your way up to doing vinyl, what was the first one that you worked on?
My very first vinyl album project was for Rick Ocasek. Yeah. Yeah.
My little fangirl heart is beating out of my chest. I mean, I have to say thank you. I like so many. Tango in the Night, come on, as a Wild West Alberta girl, all the work that you've done with Katie Lang, I'm just like, that's that's like 2.5 hours from my hometown. So
wow. Well, Katie's one of my good friends. She's we've worked together since she signed to Warner's or to Sire.
Iconic.
I think 1985. We worked together that long.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I could just gush for hours and hours. So.
Well, she's pretty special.
Yeah. I mean, so are you. So like for my record collection specifically. Yeah. So thank you.
Well, I think I was really, I think I was really fortunate. It was sort of a little bit of the right place at the right time, but also really wanting to do that work. Like when I got the opportunity to get my foot in the door and step foot into the art department of a record company, I made a deal with the devil and I was like, I do not ever want to go back. I do not ever want to leave this place. Like I'm just going to prove to them that I am the best little production artist and graphic designer that they've ever seen. So I would, just work my ass off.
Yeah. I feel like that's pretty industry wide. If you want to get in here, I feel like that's what we always say to people that ask us how we get into the business and how we're doing in our fields. And I say, like, keep your eyes open and like ready for any opportunity that drops on you, but then always just outwork everybody, and then nobody will ever say no to you.
Right.
But do you think it was kind of the time too? Because like if he saw an email from the wrong name, then he would have just been like, later.
There wasn't any email.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But that's what
no
I mean.
Email.
Right?
You literally had to be like,
yeah,
put through by the secretary and
which is so amazing.
For someone.
Which is, I mean, that's the best. How many people faked a name to do that same thing?
to try
right?
to try to get their foot in the door.
Yeah,
my
that's an
name
amazing
is
story.
Rob. Okay, sick. Hello.
I mean, honestly, I didn't know any different until after the fact. I think the secretary told me that it was a mistake. Like after I got the job and everything, like, oh, this is such a funny story. Like Pete you never would have gotten through to him. Like,
You're like, here's the best Christmas present ever. Thanks.
Yeah. So it's a sign, I sort of like, okay, I need to be here. These are my people.
Totally.
So back to the first record that you got to work on. What was that experience like? What did they give you? And, as direction?
Well, again, I'm the lowest, gal on the totem pole in the art department. And also the art department is kind of decimated. There's very few people there. Right. And the people who are left are sort of slightly demoralized because things have not been going that well for the last couple of years at the record company. It's been hard recovering from the the big, I guess it was like a big recession essentially for the record industry after disco. But they were starting to sign acts, hip, like, the new stuff coming up. So there was hope on the horizon. But for Rick Ocasek, basically I got 2 photographs that were, that had been done, that were pre-approved. They were hand tinted. And I was basically just the production artist, design this, put some type on it, typeset the lyrics for the dust sleeve, typeset the back cover, show us some comps. And literally at that time, everything was made. You made it by hand on a drafting table. You glued pictures to 12-inch pieces of artboard, and you rubbed down, you ordered type, which took a day or 2 to get back. And then you ordered, transfers, and you rubbed it down, and you had made all your decisions about color and size and everything in advance. And, maybe based on the budget, you might have had, I don't know, a few to 5 different options or whatever, 10 different options, things you'd have typeset and things that you'd, have rub down lettering made, transfer lettering made for, and you could have like half a dozen photo stats or whatever. So you had your shit that you decided you were going to work with, and then you glued it together.
I love this.
And if you, God forbid, you made a mistake, then you were like, okay, I have to like sell them on that. Like I have to explain like why that's cool now.
So this is the new way he's spelling his name.
Oh, haven't you seen this before? This is so cool. No. So yeah, so you made, it was very, very pre-planned, thought out, methodical, and it took days, and you would make your comps, and then you would send them by messenger or by mail to their recipient, and you might hear back in 2 days or a week or a month.
Wow.
Crazy.
How involved were the artists?
Depends on the artist. And also I think it depends on how trustworthy you are, or I was at the time. So that, as I moved up the ladder and had more notches on my belt and more artists that I'd worked with, the more likely it was that I was going to work with an artist directly. When you're first starting out, there's going to be some layers. There's going to be the management and the creative director or the product manager or the publicist or somebody. There's going to be many layers between you and the artist often, unless the artist is also young and inexperienced. And then they're fine putting you together in a room like, you guys figure it out. So there was that. Certainly when I was first starting out, I was given a lot of like young artists who were also just starting out. So we could go play, and it was like, again, not that risky.
Right.
Because everything had to be approved ultimately by, you know, your higher ups or their manager or whatever. So, you know, there was that. But the more work that I did, the more likely it was that I would work directly with the artists. So probably the first ones in that case were people like Katie Lang, even Madonna. You know, I was sent to New York in maybe 1983, right after her first album, to go and meet with her. And it was literally like, hey, we signed this young girl, you know, go check her out, like go like meet with, you know, I'm going to send you to New York, go meet with her, you know, figure out tell us what she's about, kind of thing. And it's like, you're young, she's young, go to New York.
Oh my God.
Little did they know.
Little did they know. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, she was super cool. She was already kind of like, you know, very like formidable. Like when we sat down and had a drink or a coffee or something in a bar on the Lower East Side. And it was like, this person is really, really intense, like very special.
Mm-hmm.
And, we needed a press shoot for her because things were blowing up, and they just had the artwork from the first album, and it was just going crazy. So we needed more pictures. And my friend George Holtz, who had given me the intro to Warner Brothers Records in the first place, I was like, George, now I need your help. I need you to go photograph this girl, Madonna, you know. And he literally, like, you know, he was carrying her suitcases and you know, going through her clothes and picking out stuff. And it was just very like, you know, it's just, you just do it. You just make it work.
That's
it was
amazing.
Before all of the fancy, you know, stylists and hair and makeup and you know, giant studios for photo shoots and all of that. They just, I think, just did it. I can't remember where the shoot happened, but it was just somebody's room, a bedroom or something with a gray wall.
That's amazing. So, I mean, your resume includes an insane amount of artists. So
there's definitely some bad ones in there. That's the drawback of working for a label, is, you know, that you have to do it all. You know, you don't get to just pick and choose. Like, you know, you get a bunch of duds too, or you get a bunch, you know, that it's like, you know, it's all well intentioned. And everybody has the right thing in mind, but it's like it's never going to go anywhere. You know that.
Is there one that you're like super, super, super proud of, that you're just like, yep, that's the one, that's it?
I mean, Katie Lang, you know, is just
amazing.
It's been, you know, she's been amazing and has always been amazing. You know, again, it was one of those things that we're going to send you to meet this girl, Katie Lang, you know, and go to Nashville, meet her. She's kind of kooky, and go figure her out, you know, like that kind of thing. So there was a lot of that, like just like they just send you like to go figure out what you're supposed to do about somebody or with them, or talk to them, figure out what their creative point of view is, and which is nice actually, that was Warner's method in a way, that like they were open to that conversation happening. It didn't come down from on high, like, you know, from like in an ad agency or whatever, like this is the creative, and you know, this is how we want to visualize her or whatever. And it's like they actually did just say, go have that relationship and figure out what this person wants to do, what they're about, and then come back and we'll talk about how to, you know, what are we going to do about that? Who are we going to hire? Who's going to photograph them? Are we going to do art? You know, what's the right approach? How do we help package this person's, you know, music and put it out in the world?
So when you're starting that kind of conversation with them, are you asking the artist like, what's your vision, or what's the what's your idea for this record? Because like, how often do artists have that? I cut records. I'm a short run lathe cutter, and like the nightmare of my life, every single release is artwork because I'm so far out of my depth with it. And I have a graphic designer that I work with, and there's so many of the recording artists that are like, I'm so lost. I don't know what I want. What do you think? And I'm like, I'm not the person that you should ask these questions to. I'm not that gifted, but sometimes they have a very specific thing and they send my poor graphics guy like 35 different pictures. And they're like, don't use this color palette. We want these 5 Pantones. And I'm like, oh, hey, go on with your bad self. Cause I think more specifics would be good and kind of a general direction, but I mean, they're artists. So at the end of the day, it's probably like herding cats a little bit, especially if they're, in rocket boots on their way up the charts or like exploding onto a scene where they're like, oh, well, this has to be cool. Somebody's got to want to buy this. Like,
we're artists too, don't forget.
Yeah.
We're the crazy ones too.
That's what I mean. I'm like, to put 2 of those crazy people in a tiny hamster ball together. And I mean, sometimes, you get genius, like the Tango and the Night cover. Oh my God. Can we just talk about that one?
Every project is different and every artist is different. Some of them, some artists do come with really, really clear visions about what they want, or a piece of art, like in the case of Tango in the Night, that they've already commissioned, that they've decided. In that case, it was Lindsay Buckingham who said, I want to use this piece of art. And then in other cases it's really like, okay, we're going to have this very long conversation about what the songs are about, what made you write this record, where you are emotionally, how you think this fits into the larger world of the history of music. I mean, it's like you can totally go down a major rabbit hole with that. It just depends on the artist.
Did you find from the start that you were doing a lot of art directing, or did you start more like doing photography or doing cuts and edits and things like that? Or because it sounds like sort of dependent on the person, you were sort of art directing from the start, but was that the case?
Yeah, I think so. Depending on how prestigious the artist is or was. If I was working with a major artist, I might get more input from the people above me, a creative director or marketing people or whatever. Management sometimes has a very, very strong point of view about what they want to see happen. But in other cases, it's open. And so I would, meet with the artist and management and talk to them about what they wanted. So once you kind of know where you're going with it, it's not always a sure thing that you're going to need to do a photo shoot. Like it's not always the thing that you do. Usually it's needed for press, but it may not be the thing that you want for the cover. And so you're going to focus your energy on something else, the creation of a piece of art, or the hiring an illustrator or hiring an artist, or licensing a famous work of art. That's often the direction that we take. So you have to kind of figure out what your approach is going to be to the cover, and then plan everything around that, or the project, and plan everything around that. Okay, we're going to focus 75% of our energy toward creating an illustration, cover illustration, and then we're going to do a publicity photo shoot. We're going to use a couple of those shots inside the package, etc. And then others are really, really, really photo driven, where it's all about the photo shoot and the photo, concept. So in that case, it was definitely art directing, and putting together those photo shoots and then editing the photo shoots, and working with the material. And back then in the 80s, when I first started, everything was on film, of course, and analog and slow, and you'd get boxes of proof sheets, and you'd have to go through all of that and then order your prints and all of that. It's just very different process from today.
Very
Big
different.
giant light table and the tiny squinty thing.
Yep. I have permanent like neck damage from that move.
Right. That's when they needed the like raising.
Lots of photo editing.
Oh man.
Yeah.
How did you do photo editing when it was in film? That would have been.
You had to, oh, you mean like retouching? Is that what you mean? Yeah. They're two different word terms. Photo editing back in the day meant actually selecting the images that you wanted, cropping and having them printed a certain way or whatever. Now photo editing is essentially retouching, what we used to call retouching. And retouching was done by, sending it out to a professional retoucher. So you'd have to make giant prints like dye transfers or oversized prints so that the retouching could be done and then be less visible when the project was rephotographed and shrunk down. Yeah.
What were your timelines like then? I mean, I feel like now everything is so quick, even though our turn times are so long.
I know. Yeah, no, with, digital age, everyone assumes that everything can be done instantly. And in some cases it can, but the timelines were a little bit more stretched out for production, for actual design and production of, an album package. It might have taken 2 to 3 months, maybe from start to finish. And that was just based on the actual things that had to be done by other people, things, processes, photo processing, retouching, typesetting, all these things were done by other people. And now it's all usually done by the designer.
Well, LA is such a dynamic scene. Did you find yourself still going out into the environment in the clubs and things like that to try and keep on top of like trends and what new stuff was going on?
Absolutely. I went out to shows all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Because that's probably one of the places that you had one of the biggest edges, right? Like being fresh and new and kind of self-taught and self-directed. You're like, no, I got this. Oh no, this is what my people are doing. This is why this is relevant.
I mean, maybe it's myopic, but I want to say I didn't look around too much at what other people were doing. I had kind of a gut instinct about what I liked. And I was keep way up on photography. I was, really into like what was happening all around the world in photography. I consumed major amounts of magazines and I was kind of a type slut too, like I just want, I really, really like type.
Me
and,
too.
Yeah, and, just wanted to experiment all the time. I did a lot of things by hand. I did a lot of hand lettering and handwriting and things like that on my packages. So, there were certainly people that I was impressed by, and people that I would watch, and I'd be like, oh, that's such a great designer, or that's such a beautiful thing, and I kind of like kind of save it, put it away, and just like admire it, and just have that kind of in part of my consciousness. But
yeah, you mentioned that there were some covers that you maybe didn't like, or ideas in that way. Was there anything that you saw sort of trending at one time that you were like, I hate this, like I wish this wasn't something that everybody was doing right now?
Oh, I think the worst offender for me, like because all kinds of graphic design, it's like, I think bad graphic design can be actually interesting as well. But the things, I don't mind naive graphic design. I don't mind obnoxious graphic design. It's like, it's all good as long as it's like working with the project and the music. But I think the sad, like, kind of loser way out is just putting a really mediocre photo of an artist on a cover and, putting their name across the top. It's sort of like, and, I'll admit I've been forced to do that on many occasions, like where, you've shown something much more interesting or inspired, or a photograph that's a little bit more unique or off, or, for whatever reason has greater, qualities in my opinion, but, oftentimes people just go for the kind of lowest common denominator.
Right.
And that's sad. There's the cutout bins were full of those, back in the day.
It's gonna cut the corner off of this one. You get that one for $2.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I had heard that the Like a Virgin record, you guys had to put patchouli in the glue.
We did not have to. We did not have to. No, Madonna asked for that. It was for Like a Prayer, actually. It wasn't Like a Virgin. It was Like a Prayer, and that whole, album was, a lot of the songs were imbued with a lot of religious, references, etc. And she wanted patchouli. She wanted to be patchouli scented. And so the manufacturer, the printer, which I think was Ivy Hill at the time, found a solution. They said the only way that they could kind of stabilize that scent and not have it be like whatever crazy on one piece of vinyl and not on another piece of vinyl, like they looked at putting it in the ink, they looked at putting it in the coating, they looked at all kinds of things, like a little like scent packet or something, and they're like, the glue, we're gonna put it in the glue.
It's such a hippie thing to do, man.
That's so interesting.
Patchouli.
And supposedly they still smell like, if you get you open up and like one of those from back in the day, it's still got that strong patchouli smell. It was meant to smell like the incense in a church.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So interesting.
Yeah, I got hate mail over that from people who suffer from allergies.
They're also not residents
I
of
still
San
have
Francisco.
those letters from people. Who suffer from stuff. A couple people wrote they were very, very, very upset.
Is it something that you show to artists when they're like, "Oh, we should do this," and you're like, "No, this is why.
This is why you don't do that.
This is why you don't want to do that. You're going to offend
don't want to be
so many
responsible
people
for that."
Has there been any other like random requests for packaging that you were just like, "This is totally possible. This is totally impossible"?
We've experimented, over the years with lots and lots of crazy packaging, and almost all of it is doable.
Yeah.
It just depends on how much money you have and and whether or not, that's something you really, really want to make happen. But especially in the 80s, by the mid 80s and the early 90s, we were like really going crazy with special packaging. And part of it was around the, release of CDs, doing deluxe packaging for that. But yeah, we do things with, that had, water, like, or liquid or gels encased in plastics, did vacuum form things, made things out of, solid metal and, you name it, pizza boxes. Art portfolios, like you have an idea, you can make it.
I have a really amazing like Michael Jackson box set kind of thing that's like that. It's this gigantic like 3-foot square red box, and then you open it and then there's like a big photo album. There's all just like incredible photos of Michael Jackson, but the thing is like 40 pounds.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, yeah,
a lot of the vinyl sets we do now are crazy like that. They're challenges for the structural engineers.
Totally.
In packaging, because you think about it, it's like you've got 9 pieces of 180 gram vinyl, or you've got you know, 18 or you've got 12, you got to figure out like, can all of that fit in a, you know, record album style thing? Like what's the weight of the sleeves? What's the weight? How does the binding need to be manufactured so that all of this shit isn't just going to fall out? It's very expensive packaging, you know, to do some of these vinyl boxes, because you need something really, you know, strong to hold it.
Yeah.
And when you're coming up with concepts like that, are you bringing in like a team? And I can just imagine it's like a boardroom, and there's the lettering guy, and there's the photographer, and then there's like this person. You guys are all like, okay. And they're like, this is the artist, this is the release. Go, like throw all your, like Mad Men style.
It's not like, really like Mad Men.
No, Jeri.
You know, it depends on the artist. It certainly depends. Like on Tom Petty projects, you know, it is more of a creative collaboration with, you know, with Adria Petty and the Petty Estate now, right, and management and, you know, manufacturing and the record company. And, you know, when you're talking about doing big, you know, releases like, you know, Wildflowers and all the rest, or, you know, projects like that, it does take a large team of people to make all that stuff come together. Yeah. On other projects, you know, if it's just a new release by a, you know, whatever average artist, you know, and it's a single album, it's, you know, I do that by myself. So, or, you know, one of the designers at Smog, did they just do, you know, we just do it. It's like, doesn't require a team of people.
Are you kind of relieved when those ones come across your desk? You're like, oh, good.
Oh yeah, those are nice. They're like meditative. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I got this.
Yeah.
It's nice when the pace is a little different between projects, you know, when you have some sort of nice, simple ones that you can turn to and don't have to think about all of the, you know, moving parts of one of these giant releases, multi-disc releases.
Does that kind of change around record store days, and in the last couple of years with the multiple drops for record store day because of COVID? Did that change your guys' process in the way that you needed to try and fast track some things? Or
yeah, usually we get, you know, we get the heads up, or we get contacted by the label or management, whoever's driving that release. We're not setting release dates for artists, you know, our clients are. Right. So yeah, they'll let us know. We've got, you know, whatever, you start to hear about the ones that are lining up for record store day, and the, you know, as you know, the turn times are ridiculously long. So we're doing these things, you know, 6 months in advance at least.
So what spawned you wanting to start your own company with your husband, Smog Design?
Well, I worked in the, you know, record industry for 17 years, excuse me. I worked at Warner's for 13 years, and then I worked at A&M for almost 4. And I left Warner's when, you know, when they had gone through yet another merger and acquisition, and then Mo Austin and Lenny Waronker left. And I felt like I'd spent the best years there that I was going to spend, and that it was a good time to maybe leave and try something different. So I went to A&M and learned a bunch of stuff there. It was fairly chaotic, but I learned, you know, how to commission videos, and I ran the creative services department, and we started doing things, you know, on the internet and websites and digital stuff. And it was just, you know, there was more for me to do there, more to learn. I wasn't just sort of sitting in my comfort zone of graphic design and running a, you know, wonderful art department. And then A&M got merged and, you know, and acquired, and they shut us down. Geffen and A&M were shut down on the same day. Pretty much everyone was let go. I was offered a job at Interscope, which I did not take. And I just went home, and my husband had a studio in our house, and I said, well, I'm just going to work here for a little while and see what happens. And that was 21 years ago. So yeah, we just started cranking and having a good time. And I was offered a couple of other jobs over a couple of years at Sony and other places. And I looked at them and I was like, no, I think this is a good time to just be on my, independent. Now I can work for anybody. I can work for all the record companies. I don't have to do the crummy projects, just because you work for the label, you have to take care of everything. It's like, I don't have to take care of everything anymore. I can pick and choose. And I've been doing this long enough so that I have lots and lots of relationships with different artists and management companies and record companies. And so, started to see like all of the best of that come together in our studio. And, we were able to grow it. We hired, several employees for, 20 years. We had 5 or 6 or 7 people working at Smog, and we were just like humming along, just doing all kinds of stuff.
What would you say? That. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And I wish that when I had graduated design school, or even while I was in design school, that I even knew how to find this type of an opportunity. Because I think you're looking for like art design for music specifically or something, and that isn't really how it works. But if someone were looking for an opportunity to work in this type of a field, where would they look, or how would they get started in something like this?
Well, I mean, so many people that I know had started by doing album packages for their friends, that's one track for sure. Like lots and lots and lots of people do that, like where they just start, they're music fans, they go to lots of shows, they have lots of friends in bands, maybe they're in a band or whatever, and they start doing packaging for their friends. And that can grow into a, thriving and lively, independent, practice. If that isn't the case, I would still encourage people to look at labels, indie labels, larger labels, try to get your foot in the door, learn from a production department, learn from people who actually manufacture records. Like those kinds of things and learn from editorial departments, from, the management companies, there's a lot to be learned within a record label if it's a good record label. But also, again, I'm starting to see that some of those skill sets and some of those departments and some of those areas of expertise are sort of dwindling. More and more is falling on the manufacturers, the printers, the designers, people out of house to figure out how everything works.
Yeah.
And with the advent of streaming and digital downloads and things like that, has that kind of changed any way that you guys approach doing like packaging, more so design and things like that, because you've got way less space and
right. I mean, it always comes down to that little icon, the mini for streaming, but that doesn't mean that that's what your package has to look like. Like what I find I'm doing more and more, and I know this is to be true with all the designers that work with us, is like, you're doing multiples. You're just doing more variants and more variations on the artwork. So your artwork has to be, malleable. It has to be the thing that can be the streaming, the 2-inch icon. But if you need to blow that out to a vinyl box set, it's not necessarily going to be the same piece of artwork or the same interpretation of that artwork. You're going to want to throw more at it, more than likely, for a deluxe package that somebody's going to hold in their hands and open and touch and all of that. So we have tools at our disposal to make those versions of the package more interesting than the little distillation of the cover image for streaming services.
How often does the tangible part come into the conversation because I know with some of the records that I'm doing, I'm telling people, oh yeah, I can do different kinds of labels for your record. This is the matte one, and this is the satin finished one, and this is this. And people just like really love
They glaze over, like, what are you talking about?
Opposite. They love getting in the label box and being like, ooh, what's this one? Oh, what's that one? So I mean, sometimes that's like really fun. And then sometimes it is a rabbit hole that's not recoverable. And I'm just like, okay, you get two choices now, because this is it's getting too crazy.
You have to gauge your client, your artist. You have to like know how much to offer them. Yeah, I mean, when it's a good client, a good creative collaboration between the parties, then we'll talk about anything, whatever you want. Like, let's go for it. We can try anything. There's an endless array of things that you can do in printing. If you have time and money.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't have time and money, then you get the satin AQ coating on the 12-point board, and that's that.
That's it.
Yeah.
So here's the best question then. If you are a band, because this might apply to some of our listeners, if you're a band with a limited budget and you're an independent, what do you think is the best bang for your buck design wise that will make an impact across the decades, across the years? What's a timeless choice that will always kind of like resonate?
Ooh, hire a good designer. I mean, I do believe that. It's like, if you don't have a lot of money, then you need a lot of imagination. You need creativity. You need somebody who's going to bring to that like some meaning. Yeah. So, because even if it's printed shitty or whatever, if it has meaning, if it's cool, if it like goes with your music, then it's going to resonate. And I think a good designer's job is to get to that, and not just put the photo on the cover with the typography.
Is that something that you do? Is that part of your process? Because I would be like, I'm going to listen to this record until it is a part of my soul while I'm trying to conceptualize what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
How many times did you listen to Tango in the Night before you're like, okay, I need a new record?
With the transition of everything to digital, do you find that your creative process is still the same? Are you still like sketching to start, or cutting and pasting things to start, or are you like all in the computer now?
No, not all in the computer. Please God, like we all need some time away from the computer. The computer is the tool. The computer is the drafting board and of the past. So it's like, when I'm ready to put it all together, then you use the computer, use Adobe Creative Suite or whatever you're going to use. Hopefully I've done a lot of research before that stage, and that can be in books or online, or going to a museum, or talking to somebody, or whatever, just trying to listening to the music, trying to write notes, take a lot of notes, talk to the artist, talk to the manager, talk to people about the project. If there's anything else that's going into the project, like liner notes can be amazing. Sometimes they come way too late to help you, but sometimes they come ahead of time, and you're like, okay, I got the whole story right here. Right. I can, read about it, or, I do a lot of research first, and then sometimes sketching, mostly note writing, just like writing down my thoughts about stuff. And I rarely do any cutting and pasting anymore.
That was going to be my next question.
I
like,
mean,
how do I get you to do a record like that for me?
I can still do it for sure.
Transfer font, I want it.
Yeah, I can still do it, but it's like it takes way longer.
We'll start on the packaging now, because it's going to take me that long to make the record. Trust me.
Yeah, and if you screw up, like, well, that's what you get. So
I would still be happy with it. I would find a way to justify it.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice to step back and make things by hand again. And I do still do sometimes physical mock-ups, which is nice, meaning
Cool.
once everything's designed and, I'll print things out and I'll make it, I'll just make one to look at it. That's fun. And sometimes I need that for other things too.
Yeah.
Or
Which-
photos or for the artist or for some proof of concept, like it works,
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, this does fit in here, trust me.
Yeah.
At what point does the colored vinyl conversation come into packaging? Like, is that one of the earlier things that the label talks to you about, where they're like, oh, we're thinking of doing a color, and you're like,
Or do
"Please
they
don't
at
do a
all?
color."
Yeah.
Yeah, again, it depends on the label, depends on the artist, depends
Yeah.
on the number of products that they're going to put out, whether they want variants or whether they can only go one way. Or,
Right.
and of course, as you know, it's just getting harder and harder and harder to secure that, manufacturing. And
Yeah.
I had to commit to a vinyl color on a project recently without a cover, without any idea what the cover was going to look like. We had to
Oof.
pick one, because if we didn't pick one, we didn't get one.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
basically I talked to the artist, and, I was like, well, what do you feel?
How do you feel about taupe? Do you
Feel
like it?
this is going. Like, is this like, and it was it's actually a legacy artist. So it's sort of like, is this part of the brand or the vibe?
Right.
Or, we have to, if we don't pick one, we don't get one. So
Yeah.
we picked one and we're going to make the package work with that.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
work around. I was like, I can work with baby blue.
Yeah.
That's a pretty timeless color they
Yeah,
made.
I can work with that.
Yeah,
Just don't give me
absolutely.
neon green or, orange or something that's like, I cannot do that for this.
You have 4 color choices and they're all highlighter colors.
Yeah, it is.
There we go,
Interesting.
back to
Yeah.
the 80s.
And, and they're all
I
for
mean, I
William
love those
Shatner.
colors, but
Yeah.
it just depends on the artist, the project that you're working on.
Yeah, a new
Yeah.
William Shatner record on neon green probably wouldn't go that good.
We tried to get it. We actually tried to get it for a Donald Fagen, The Night Fly live, but
Cool.
we couldn't. They were out.
Yeah, I mean, we have boats stuck at ports again, and so a bunch
No.
of release dates. We're having to talk to people about if they want to swap colors to make release dates, because
Really?
Oof.
yeah, it's crazy.
The LA harbor here is backed up with something like, I don't know, a lot of ships. Like they're
Exactly.
saying it's months worth of ships that they're trying to unload.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, so that colored PVC is probably in there.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Well, I mean, this was great, and I really, appreciate your time. I don't want to take up too much of it. Did you have any other questions you wanted to ask, Robyn?
Oh, I mean, I have hundreds of
I know.
questions. I want to keep Jeri on the line forever.
Throw one out. Throw one out.
You're amazing, Jeri, as I could fangirl for more. I mean, Dierks Bentley, ZZ Top, Van Halen, Aha,
Dio.
Paul Simon, Dio. We'll link it in the show notes so that everybody else can see how brilliant you are and the incredible career that you've had and the impact that you've had on numerous and various record collections. I mean, I know that there are going to be a lot more people exclaiming, I have that record, while they're listening to this podcast too. So we're so thankful for you giving us your time this evening. It's been a super pleasure to meet you. I always get super geeked that we did this, that we are making this podcast and we get to talk to such iconic, legendary humans that have done such amazing things throughout their career. So it's so incredible to talk to you.
Yes, really.
Yeah,
Thank you
totally.
so much.
No problem.
We love you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You guys are both great.
Oh,
Oh, thank you.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again for joining us on the Women in Vinyl podcast for episode 16 with Jeri Heiden, legendary designer with Smog. Thank you to Normandie Records and Pahua, Hey Cosmo, and G-Flux for the use of their song La Noche. We have a podcast sponsor alert. We want to send a huge thank you to other record labels. They've gifted us and our listener, that's you, a 50% off code. That's WIV50 in their store for the myriad of resources that they've compiled there. If you want to start a record label, go to www.otherrecordlabels.com/store. Code WID50 at checkout. Hey, the Women in Vinyl store is live too. Check us out on the website. Buy yourself some stuff. Buy somebody you know some stuff. Always join us in the conversation on Instagram or send us an email if we have said something erroneous at media@womeninvinyl.com. Also check out womeninvinyl.com for past episodes, our crazy bitchin' store, the job board if you want to get into this crazy industry, and our big library of resources. Don't forget to like, subscribe, give us a review on your favorite podcast delivery method. And you can also contribute to furthering our mission at patreon.com/womeninvinyl, where you will find all of the B-sides, deep cuts, amazing extras, not lying, amazing extras, big high fives there, and help us start a not-for-profit to further the demystification, education, and infiltration of more women and non-binary identifying humans into the vinyl making space. Take it away, Henry.
This episode has been brought to you by Women in Vinyl and Red Spade Records. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, and you can always contact us directly by visiting www.womeninvinyl.com.